Good morning, students. Today we will start with Prose 5, The Summit Within. So the author of this prose is HPS Ahluwalia. Okay, so this is the picture of the author. Major Haripal Singh Ahluwalia, born 6th November 1936, is an Indian mountaineer, author, social worker and retired Indian Army officer. During his career, he has made contributions in the fields of adventure, sports, environment, disability and social work. He is the 6th Indian man and 21st man in world that climbed Mount Everest. On 29 May, 12 years to the day from the first ascent of Mount Everest, the fourth and last summit with H.C.S. Rawat and Fu Dorji Sherpa Ahluwalia made the summit. This was the first time three climbers stood on the summit together. In Indo-Pakistan War of 1965, HPS Ahluwalia was injured and was confined to a wheelchair. That means he was no more able to walk on his own feet. He is the recipient of 3 national awards. First is Arjun Award that he got in 1965, Padma Shri again in 1965 and Padma Bhushan in 2002. Okay? Prose 5, The Summit Within. So, the author of this prose is Major HPS Ahluwalia. He was a member of the first successful Indian expedition to Mount Everest in 1965. So, over here, we'll see how did he feel when he stood on the highest point in the world. Let us hear his story in his words, climbing the summit and then the more difficult task of climbing the summit within. So, you can say that this story, this prose, or you can say this autobiography is being divided into 4 parts. So, we'll take it in a part-wise manner. So, the first successful expedition to the Mount Everest. HPS Ahluwalia was one of the members of the first ever successful team that reached the top of Mount Everest in 1965. The chapter discusses his emotions and moods on reaching the top of the summit. On reaching the top, HPS Ahluwalia shares his sense of joy and triumph at being among the first ones to reach the top. Besides these 2 natural emotions, there were also a lot of humility, for they thanked God for making it possible. HPS Ahluwalia was however surprised that sadness was also reflected in his sentiments on having accomplished the feat. Even when the joy lasts a lifetime, there was a deep sense of sorrow. Why? Because the ultimate goal had been attained. There was a certain sense of vacuum as well and aimlessness also that had replaced the earlier objectives, and there would be nothing higher to climb and all roads hereafter would lead down. HPS Ahluwalia over here talks about one of the 3 qualities that he learns. So, I think you should mark this in your book also. It is on page number 77. Yes, it's on page number 77. There are few points which I will ask you to underline. So remember that you should underline those sentences in your book as well. So, there can be a question that what were the three qualities that HPS Ahluwalia learns during his summit. So you can see a climb to summit means endurance, persistence and willpower. These were the qualities, three qualities which he learned over there. Okay, so HPS Ahluwalia asked himself a number of questions. He examines the enthusiasm behind reaching the top. Why one wishes to reach the top, and when one has done so, it becomes an event that happened in the past, whose memory would fade away with every passing day. Then he realizes that reaching the top of the mountain helped him to become aware of the second summit. What was the second summit? The summit of the mind. Okay, climbing the mountains means to overcome the obstacles. Obstacles means that are both physical as well as mental. One requires endurance, persistence and willpower to do so. Mountains are nature at its best, and they force you to acquire all these three qualities. Climbing the Everest, which is the highest and the mightiest every bit of your personality, is challenged. It requires great force and power, but according to Ahluwalia, it is also a way for communion or spiritual unity with God. He discusses how the passage onwards and backwards are both equally difficult, and during every moment when you risk your life, you remember God and thank Him for every breath that you breathe. Now, if I'll say next, we'll talk about the smallness of human being in the universe and concerns a fellow climber. So over here on page number 77, there is one more line you can see. The passage back is as difficult as the passage onwards. And then when the summit is climbed, there is exhilaration, the joy of having done something, the sense of a battle fought and won. There is a feeling of victory and of happiness. Okay, so the next part you can say is the smallness of human beings in the universe and concerns of fellow climbers, that he was worried about his fellow climbers as well. So according to Ahluwalia, climbing up the top is one of the life-challenging experiences. From the top, one doesn't just see the other smaller peaks, but also he realizes his own smallness and the largeness of the universe. It teaches one the lesson to rise above the usual pettiness. Therefore, the experience is not just physical, but emotional and spiritual as well. You can conclude these lines from this paragraph that then there is the fact that Everest is not just a physical climb. The man who has been the mountain top becomes conscious in the special manners of his own smallness in this universe. Though HPS Ahluwalia and his team were successful to reach the highest peak, that is on Mount Everest, and what he noticed that standing on the Mount Everest, he was able to see everyone to the smallest part, but it was on the other hand making him aware that universe is so large and we are not even equal to a dot on this earth. Okay, so smallness means his own smallness. How small, how such a tiny creature he is in front of such a large universe. So in the face of death, every moment one becomes more and more conscious of life. One erroneous move of a climber can also affect his fellow climber or climbers, and the vice versa. You are therefore always struggling for your and the life of your fellow climbers who were climbing the Mount Everest along with you. You become more and more conscious of the needs of your fellow climbers rather than of yourself. You climb or descend always, but usually it enables you to move onwards. That means you draw inspiration from each other. Okay? Then, what happens as soon as they reach over there? That means what happens as soon as they reach to the summit, to the success point. Obsence to God for enabling to reach the summit within. Thanking God, worshipping God. Obscience, over here you can see obscience to whichever God you worship. So what they did, reaching the top, one experiences the ultimate form of reverence for God. Every climber left a picture or a symbol of God on the mountain peak. Ahluwalia left a picture of Guru Nanak, while his companion Rawat placed the picture of goddess Durga. Others too similarly left relics or symbols of Buddha, Christ, and so on. H.P.S. Ahluwalia talks of the summit of the mind as well. Not only the summit of the Mount Everest, but also the summit of the mind as well, which is equally important to be climbed. To become more aware of oneself, to gather more knowledge about the interior workings of a mind, and nobody but only we on our own could do it. He discusses how the effects of both the climbs are the same. They teach you lessons that last a lifetime. So, I would say that the concluding paragraphs of this chapter are very important. There is another summit. It is within yourself. It is in your own mind. Each man carries within himself his own mountain peak. He must climb it to reach to a fuller knowledge of himself. It is fearful and unscalpable. It cannot be climbed by anyone else. You yourself have to do it. The physical act of climbing to the summit of a mountain outside is akin to act of climbing the mountain within. The effects of both the climbs are the same. Whether the mountain you climb is physical or emotional and spiritual, the climb will certainly change you. It teaches you much about the world and about yourself. I venture to think that my experience as an Everester has provided me with the inspiration to face life's ordeals resolutely. Climbing the mountain was a worthwhile experience. The conquest of the internal summit is equally worthwhile. The internal summits are perhaps higher than Everest. So last two paragraphs which I told you are important because they are the concluding paragraphs wherein the writer has got some inspiration by reaching that summit. What does it mean? It is far more difficult to climb the summit within oneself than to climb the summit of a mountain. one can get a fuller knowledge of oneself merely by climbing one's personal and internal mountain peak. That internal means something which is in mind, which is in your soul, which you think. It is a fearful and unscalpable like the climb of the summit of a mountain. Both the climbs teach one much about the world and about oneself. The internal summits are much higher than Everest. The climber gets the inspiration to face life's ordeals and determination. So, this is how we can conclude this chapter.